Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. Today, I'm really, really glad because I have a very special guest. I have Tony. You work in stress management, and we met in my meetup. And when I found out that you work in stress management, one, I was not surprised because of all the knowledge you shared, but two, I was really, really pleased. And what I'm learning from you, I think, needs to be shared also to be shared with everyone listening out there. So tell us a bit about yourself.
Thank you, Marilyn, first of all, for having me. And it was a pleasure to attend your meetups because you do carry a wealth of knowledge, and there is things that I've been learning from you as well. So I am a stress management therapist and a social worker by background. And I've been working for quite some time now to understand how some people with a history of mental health problems manage to succeed in life and overcome their negative mental states without seeking professional help. So I believe that's totally achievable in some cases. And it is all about how our perceptions of reality affects the way we assign meaning to events and the experiences in life that we go through. So it's crucial in that respect, in my practice, to have people realize that unhealthy levels of stress are the result of how we approach life. And this can be changed through personal choices. So that freedom is there to be seen and experienced. Now, when it comes to therapy, what I do is essentially helping people find healthy coping mechanisms for stressors in their lives. And we all need to accept some stress in our daily lives, but it is true that when this becomes overwhelming, then that can sometimes take over health emotions and become too much. So there are many healthy ways to relieve stress, and what we look at is always those which are sustainable in the long run, and those ones which benefit the individual on three dimensions: biological, sociological, and physical. And well, biological and physical being pretty much aligned. I should say psychological as the third element, third dimensional sphere of people's lives. So for example, eating comfort food to be in line with what you do as well may help someone feel better in the short term, but eating comfort food obviously becomes a primary method for dealing with stress. If that's the case,
yeah,
then obviously you might end up feeling stressed out for depriving yourself of comfort food, which creates a bit of a snowball effect. And that's not the primary cause as to why you got stressed out in the first place, but that keeps adding to it. So it's about people becoming aware. That's essentially in therapy. Well, the key word is awareness, and otherwise just negative things that we invite in our lives can result in other potential stressors and poor physical health.
Yeah, what you say really resonates with me because I feel therapy is really, really important, but it needs to be complemented by the body and, also you said sociologically, friends, family, and surroundings. You said something really relevant for me, which is sometimes just working on your mental health is just, it starts with a choice. And what I've noticed in myself and many other people is that we model the choice that our parents chose for their life. Before being aware, you just copy their choices basically in your life. So just wondering for you how you see it. I know that you've worked also a lot with kids. So have you seen this in kids, and what can we learn from kids?
Absolutely. Yeah, what you say is quite relevant because your moral code is defined by age 7. And yeah, when it comes to that age, you will have achieved some of the principles, if not the main ones in your life, by which you judge the outside world. And when it comes to children, I believe adults have a lot to learn from children, because they're
Yes.
pretty much stimulated by, in my experience, three elements. Curiosity, they're just curious.
Yeah.
It's widely known. And an aptitude to experimentation.
Yes. Yes. So true.
So they will just try out new things, part of which is an attention-seeking strategy, and part of it is the learning process that's embedded in the human experience.
Yeah.
And they're very good at acting as if they have already achieved their goals. So things like, I'm a hero, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's quite interesting, because they appear, they seem to be quite carefree
Yeah.
in the way they think about the goals,
Yeah.
and they're free of those inhibitions that instead with as adults we confine ourselves within. And
Yeah. Like a mask.
correct, yeah. um, and there's, because when you think about mental health and why that happens in people's lives, why is it that we slide into negative mental states that we're unable to sustain and snap out of, then there is two main elements to it across time and space, any age group. And one of them is obviously anxiety, fear of
Yeah.
uncertain what's going to happen next, which I know very little about, and I know I want to know more of, to feel safe, to safeguard myself so I don't feel that
Yeah.
And the other thing is obviously ruminating about things that happened in the past, and
Yeah.
how things, those schemes that happened in the past, define you now, define your identity. And that the most important and beautiful thing working with young people is that they seem to be very carefree in that approach. So there is this element of reconnection with your inner child, which is your emotional brain,
Yeah.
and your adult brain, which is now me and you are adults.
Yeah.
We'll move on to that in a second, as soon as we'll talk about
Yeah.
probably the key factor here, which to me is core values.
Yeah. And what you say in a way is really so relevant, but also it could be a bit scary, because for people who had a traumatic or difficult childhood, let's say first years of their life was not easy. Is everything doom, or what can they do? Of course, it's not. It's just a rhetoric question. But what can they do to, to have a like a good mental health, if you want?
To benefit, to
Yeah.
yeah, okay. Well, it really comes down to, because obviously we're talking about in that case there is traumatic experiences, or perhaps special needs as well, and it is all about obviously the network of support that's
Yeah.
around them, because inevitably young people and children, they are vulnerable in a way
Yeah,
to
like sponges.
that's right, and it is about them acting within those rules and regulation that makes them safe, which are obviously established by adults,
Yeah.
adults who are there to protect them. And if I'm getting it right, obviously what we're trying to address here is how we can restore healthy levels of thinking, so that
Yeah.
The mental health is cleared, and the things that happen in one's own mind, regardless of the age, is, they feel that they can manage independently.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there is a lot of training around confidence. Okay, there is a lot of companies that train people on how to be more confident, because people feel the confidence level is quite low, and there is very little about self-esteem, and self-esteem being the building block of confidence.
Yeah. Yeah.
So sorry, go ahead.
No. I'm just, I think it's so relevant. I just had an episode on self-esteem.
Yes.
And of course, my knowledge is not as big as yours. So I'm just thinking, how can we build self-esteem, if you want?
Okay, that ties into what we said. No,
Yeah.
regardless of age, it is about really the opinion that you've got about yourself as a person.
Yeah.
Right? And that's self-esteem. What's your opinion? Because you've got self-esteem now, the way you see yourself in relation to yourself, in relation to others, in relation to the outside world. And that's your opinion of yourself. And then there is that process that's called transition, which is where you're going in life.
Yeah.
And that's, that's the painful process of getting from where you are to where you want to be. And the final goal is called self-concept. It's how you conceptualize yourself.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Further down along the line, self-concept. And one of the mistakes that we tend to make there is to mistake happiness for a goal.
Yeah.
Of your age, because happiness is not a goal. Happiness is a feeling, and you can feel happy. So there's no, I'm going to be happy in 10 years time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once I get this and
yeah,
this and this and this, and I lose the weight, and I'm not an emotional
That's
eater,
right.
I'll be happy.
So happiness itself is intrinsic to the concept of what a good relationship you establish with your core values. This is how core values come in now. And core values being the things that you place importance on. There's plentiful definitions of what a core value is, but core values is the things that's important to you now, not in 10 years time, because you might change your mind in 10 years time, and something else might take over, and something else that you value now might be less relevant further down along the line. So what's that's important to you? What's that's important at any age, any stage of your life to the person? And that's the thing that you need to keep going back to whenever you feel that your life is going astray.
Yeah.
That's your instruction manual, is your core values.
Yeah. Can you give examples of core values to listeners out there so that they can get an idea of what's theirs?
That's right. So that's your instruction manual, is the things that keep regulating you if you do establish and keep a good relationship with your core values. And core values in turn will generate more confidence in you as a human being, because now you're being true to yourself. And if you're true to yourself, chances are that you're not externally locused anymore.
Yeah.
Locused. I think we did discuss this in one of your episodes previously, in one of your sessions. This one question came up. And being externally locused means that you do need people,
external validation,
to fulfill you emotionally, for you to feel emotionally fulfilled. Whereas the bottom line is there is nothing out there that's capable of making you feel anything but yourself from within.
Yeah.
And what's the key to that? What's the formula? You're going to have to stay true to who you are. You're going to have to stay true to who you think you are, and the things that you identify yourself with, because that's important to you. That's making you tick as a human being. So what's
It's
important
so
to
interesting
you?
because, sorry, I'm interrupting you because it makes me realize that we live in a society, like when we see movies and things like that, it's always portrayed as there's very often a woman empty inside. She meets a man and completes her, and she like feels so much better and no anxiety. It's like she's always seeking the outside person to fulfill her, and at the end of the movie she's perfect and she doesn't have mental health issue at the end. It's like she starts as a control freak or whatever, depressed, whatever, but because she found someone. And this is, I guess, the model that a lot of people grow up with.
Right, right. That's I think that that's quite relevant in today's society, in the way of what's being portrayed. That obviously, by way of self-introspection, if you do analyze who you really are within the various things that's obviously that's thrown at us by society, that you want to steer away of, because that's not a reflection of who you are, because
Yeah,
you can't have human beings lumped up in one solution, and this is the model that
yeah,
we follow to feel happy and fulfilled.
yeah,
It
so
does
true.
take a lot of self-introspection, and emotional education is crucial, it's paramount, and that is the need to self-regulate throughout life, across time and space. And
Yeah,
no matter what circumstances you go through, you'll find a way to self-regulate. And I do appreciate that things get increasingly harder as you move on in life. Life is not easy, life is tough.
yeah. The
You,
more I'm realizing, the more you go through adulthood, the more you get hits. And if you don't deal with every hit properly, they become like a massive thing. So I guess if we go back to the core values that you were saying, if every day you go back to them.
yes, that's my drive. Personally speaking, that's my drive. And for the people I care about, it is as simple as asking, okay, you're complaining about your job, or you're unhappy about some measures that have been put in place by your carers or your parents, but what's important to you now, and why do you think this is happening, and what is it that you can control
Yeah,
that's going to enable you to change it for you for the better.
yeah. So what could be important? I know we discussed this in the meetup. You said there's the connection piece, so connecting with other, or education.
Hmm.
What is it again? Also safety, maybe?
uh, Connection, sense of safety, connection. There is also, in terms of values, probably this is what we're talking about. Caring for someone is equally important, because when you do identify that someone is low in self-esteem, confidence, how might anyone know how to care for another individual until they have first cared for themselves? So you're gonna have to care
Mm,
for yourself
yeah, yeah,
and care for others. Obviously, in time of despair, being committed to other people, which begs the question: how much do you contribute to your sense of community in your community? It's very important.
yeah,
It's very important to have in life, no matter what culture, that it's got nothing to do, no correlation whatsoever with culture, where people are from, or the status. It's genuinely caring for another individual, because now you're so self-fulfilled on an emotional level. You've got a lot to offer to
yeah.
people who are not at the same stage as you in life, and that's quite important.
Yeah. So I guess anyone listening here can like decide, okay, or like think what's important, what are my values, and from a plethora of like words or something they can find online, they can decide, okay, for me it's courage, for me it's freedom, for me it's to continue to learn,
Yeah.
for me it's to take of others. And do you link it to purpose?
Purpose, yes, by all means. You're gonna have to be a person of purpose in life, no matter what your purpose is. I mean, with me, it's about having a reason to exist.
Yeah, yeah,
What's my reason to exist? I keep questioning myself every day because that can change. And there is this thing about identity. It's seen as a constant, but it's not. As a set dimension.
yeah,
Identity can change, being shaped by those core values that you keep going through in life and reevaluating versus the things that you experience. So your circumstances, and that shapes clearly your self-esteem, that shapes your confidence, that shapes your identity, who you see yourself as in relation to the external world and in relation to yourself. And when that sort of self-introspective journey is undertaken there, then clearly we do realize that we can change. We're
yeah,
always subject to change based on new things that we experience and how they shape us. So uh, another thing that's very important that walks hand in hand with caring for other people is believing in others. It's pretty much,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah, related. So most people are insecure in who they are, and this can trigger low self-confidence / low self-esteem. So it's crucial to believe in others when others do not believe in themselves.
yeah. I feel it's really interesting the way you talk about it, because sometimes it's therapy, which I find really useful, but sometimes it's really going always into deep and complex reasons why you're feeling and your childhood XYZ. And of course, memory has limits and you have your own biases, whereas you're taking it in kind of simplifying. Okay, how can I bring, if you want, fulfillment every day with my values, staying true to myself, and therefore in this way, very simply, manage my mental health.
Correct.
Uh, and as you say, it all starts with the choice. And I guess the choice is hard to make, because when you make this choice, you're kind of deciding, I'm changing my identity. I'm not becoming the victim anymore. I'm taking charge of my life and XYZ.
Mm. It's interesting that you do mention that when you say the victim. It's easy to slide into what we call the victim mindset,
Yeah.
whereby you see yourself as the victim because now you are at that stage in your life where you're externally locused, and it's down to people inside of your mind's eyes to fulfill you emotionally.
Yeah.
And if they're not there, the set of circumstances not there to fulfill you, then it's someone else's fault. Okay, it's always
Yeah.
someone else's fault. Therefore, chances are, because you see, not being able to relate on with someone on a true level because you haven't got a deep relationship with your feelings within, can easily create false relationships out there and have people latch on to things like status and possessions when they see those things in other people.
Yeah.
And it's a very dangerous place to be.
Yeah.
Number
What
one,
kind, I was just wondering what kind, because the concept of being externally, focused and or versus internally is really, I think, is very key. I was just wondering if you had a couple of exercises for people out there to start realizing how to do it, if you want.
Well, first of all, at the most basic level, I'd say just think about what your core values are, come up with a list of those values, questioning what will really matter to you in life. If money wasn't an issue, status wasn't an issue, and you didn't care about what people think about you, what does really matter to you today?
Yeah,
And jot them down. Yeah,
it's like being a child, as you're saying,
that's
going
right.
back to, yeah.
Taking yourself back in time and making those connections with your inner child, which stimulates your creativity. And the other thing, I guess, is always developing awareness, because there's another thing that's called overthinking, and we're all kind of guilty of that. Overthinking
Yeah, yeah,
is one of the major culprits in mental health, because overthinking has your brain going back to the things which is unresolved that you want to find a solution to,
yeah, yeah,
or you try and find a solution to, but failing that, you just push them away, you repel them, and they keep coming back for resolution. They keep coming back thicker and bigger for resolution, and they get shoved in the unconscious mind. But at some point, you're going to have to obviously come to terms with that and resolve them inside of you, whatever issues you're going through in life. It could be a feeling, it could be anxiety, it could be feeling depressed about something that happened in the past that you were not happy about, that you were not happy with the outcome of, and that hasn't been challenged enough inside of your mind to be able to learn from it and make a fresh start and not have that skin define who you are now. So that's
yeah.
one thing. Yeah.
Oh, I think it's yeah, I really like this approach. Um, because it's not always, I know a lot of people that don't really like to go into deep childhood memories and trauma and everything. And yeah, so I think it's really useful. What should people expect? Let's say, because it is a journey,
Hmm.
um, how would you say, like, how would they see the progress, and how quickly can they see some progress in
Okay.
themselves?
Yes, that's an interesting question. Obviously, because you want to make those outcomes of yours measurable and sustainable. Whatever method and approach to it is got to be sustainable, and things that you can sustain over time, that you don't feel overwhelmed by.
Yeah,
So it all comes down really to your personal well-formed outcomes. So well-formed outcomes follow a precise infrastructure, and well-formed outcomes is outcomes that you can measure over time. You tackle them in digestible chunks, things that you can sustain, that you can manage, you can measure, and they're self-instigated. So well-formed outcomes is indeed self-instigated, because they do not satisfy other people's preferences.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
As I said before, what if money didn't matter to you, or you didn't mind what people think about you, or status is not an issue? So
Yeah,
they
it's like it could be something like sometimes people just want to lose weight for others,
correct.
or I just want to
Yeah.
feel good and have energy for myself.
Yes. That's versus that. Yes. So well-formed outcomes are immune to external influences because it's yours. You're the
Yeah,
architects of those
yeah,
outcomes of yours.
yeah,
And uh, well-formed outcomes are based on things that you can have control over as well. So things that are within your control. that if
Yeah.
things go wrong, you can change them because you've got ownership over those outcomes, over the steps that you can take. It could be anything, it could be career, it could be finances, it could be anything you can think of. Think about the main areas of life. I think we had that discussion previously as well. Culture, religion, politics, institutions, money, career, relationships, family. Where do you stand?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so interesting and pragmatic, and I think the listeners will really, really benefit, because for me, I'm like a bit too much on the other side and the emotions and everything. And people sometimes just need pragmatic, practical things they can do, they can assess. So simple,
Mm.
but yet not easy to do on a consistent basis. So
Mm. I guess obviously when you do use the word pragmatic, yes, there is obviously that element in the approach, but it is also about striking a balance between
yeah.
logic and emotions. Logic being your pragmatic self, and emotions being how
Mm,
you feel, which is what we call the wise mind. So
yeah.
you strike a balance between the two.
Yeah.
You know that you feel your feelings and you think your thoughts, but then there is also
Yeah.
how do they interact in a way that the output, okay, can outweigh the prevalence of each in the outcome and alter the outcome that I want. For instance, if you're too emotional, you know,
Yeah.
then you probably, well, chances are you'll end up relying on people emotionally to fulfill you, uh, because now you're being externally locused. You're not benefiting from self inner emotion regulation enough, and there's got to be something else, a tool that's out there to regulate you. And if you're
Mm,
extremely logical in your approach to life, then you will probably end up lacking empathy
yeah.
with those people.
Yeah.
You don't have to
Oh,
strike a
nice.
balance.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh.
And
And for yeah.
so I was saying, obviously, with well-formed outcomes, just another couple of things there. They are compelling. Okay, so it is a genuine outcome only if it does motivate yourself and yourself only. So things like if you were to watch this movie of your life,
Mm.
what would you like the movie to look like for you to continue watching it?
Oh, that's a good question. It's a
Yeah,
homework for me now.
yeah. Well, it's really really relevant, because you might find it boring, you might find it demotivating, and what would you change? What's within your control that's going to change
Yeah.
the script, and it's going to have it's going to nudge you in a different direction that's
Mm.
more compelling, that's more interesting, that's more intriguing.
Yeah.
And the other thing that we all tend to undermine is well-formed outcomes are ecological.
Ecological.
Yeah, that means essentially that, especially adults, they're guilty of that. Okay, things like, yeah, you are in a you're in a relationship, in a romantic relationship, and she wants to live in Poland and you want to live in Australia, and that's entirely in relation to your respective careers, and that's going to create a rift. So being ecological in forming your outcomes means they must fit in with the rest of your life and the people that's important to you. Uh, they must also fit in with your values.
Yeah.
They must not clash with your context.
Mm.
So how important is it for the people that you share your life with to know about your values, and for you to know about their values and what's important to them and what's important to you, for you to find a middle ground?
Yeah. Oh, thank you. And
Welcome.
I guess as a wrap up question, I would we started at the beginning just linking it to eating and emotional eating. I want to talk about this. I mean, for me, it's the answer is obvious. Once you have all of this, you won't need to go to food to fulfill or to raise your level of happiness or to find fulfillment. And can you link it to emotional eating or the opposite? People that stop eating to.
Oh, definitely, because they'll have to use an external, have to resort to an external means to regulate themselves emotionally, which might work in the short term if you over it or under it, for that matter, but it's not the long run solution. So again, it goes back to self-introspective work. Ruminating is the one thing that involves rehashing the past, and thoughts might include things like, I shouldn't have spoken in the meeting today. That's got to do with self-esteem. Everyone looked at me like I was an idiot. Okay. Or things like, I could have stuck it out in my old job. I will be happier if I would have just stayed there. And now, that's the belief. And you stay in your new job, unhappy that you made the wrong decision. You should have stayed where you were before. Now you need to resort to something external because you're not taking responsibility to make things change, and you need to fill that emotional gap. And then it might be overeating. If you're putting on weight, it might be undereating to resolve it that way. That creates physical circumstances, a set of physical issues as well, because these three dimensions, biological, psychological, and sociological, they're all interrelated. Once one of them gets affected, you've got this chain effect. And worrying as well. So it involves negative thinking, being catastrophizing about things. Even if you're doing perfectly well in your life, then there's always something in the back of your mind that says, I'm going to get it wrong there. Yeah, okay, I'm going to start a new job next week. Something's going to go wrong along the line. And I might get kicked out, whatever the reason that you give yourself for being worried is. So ultimately, it all comes down to how you regulate your overthinking. You're going to have to notice when you think too much, basically. So awareness is key. Awareness is the first step in putting an end to overthinking. So start paying attention to the way you think. When you notice that you're replaying those events in your mind over and over, or worrying about things that you can't control, acknowledge that your thoughts aren't productive anymore, because it's all these life stories that we create inside of our mind's eyes. By paying attention to your thoughts, which are irrelated to the past, or making us feel depressed or the future, that's essential. That introduces the concepts of mindfulness. Mindfulness is, in very simple terms, being aware of your thoughts and emotions without being driven by them, without being lost in them, just being aware as an external observer. And the important thing is, with overthinking, is you're going to have to schedule time for self-reflection on a daily basis. So you're going to have to incorporate 15-20 minutes of thinking time into your daily schedule if you can, or a few times a week. And during that time, let yourself worry, ruminate, or mull over whatever you want. Then when the time's up, move on to something more productive. Just get yourself distracted away from those thoughts and feelings. So you're gonna have to let them be. Allow yourself to detach yourself from everything that's filling your daily schedule. You just need to be a bit selfish about that 20 minutes. Just take them away take time out for that. When you notice yourself overthinking things outside of your scheduled time, then you remind yourself that you'll think about that later.
Yeah, it's very useful, and I've tried this thing where you kind of slot in, like
Yes.
I know that today, every day at 5 p.m., I can think of everything that I'm worried or anxious about. It was useful. I have to do it again because the thing is that
Mm.
during the day, let's say things come up, and I know that I have this slot later on,
Yes.
and like it's like you park them, and then you become more present.
Yes. But now you're being the architect of your own thinking process.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow. Thank you very much, Tony.
welcome.
If people want to listen more
Yeah.
about your knowledge, where can they find you?
I've got a website that's called, I'm just not sure if I can pull that across, but it's called mentalhealthcoaching.org.
Okay.
And I do run online meetups as well as yourself, Marilyn,
Yeah.
which is a meetup, and they're entirely for free. It's just a way of creating a community of like-minded people
Yeah.
and give back to the community. And in a way, is those sessions are made up of lectures slash opportunities for self-help, and it's essentially people resonating with each other's life circumstances in a non-judgmental way, and train their empathy and train those caring skills that we all have embedded in us. And empathizing with someone is always the most beautiful thing, because it
Yeah.
means being able to have them understand that you can pick up on those feelings and emotions that lie underneath the words that they say. And that's big.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'll make sure to link everything in the show notes
Thank
um,
you.
for people to,
I appreciate
uh,
it.
yeah. Thank you very much, Tony.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.